Hey guys, welcome to episode 4 of The Balanced Lens, where we talk about faith, culture, and politics from a Christian worldview. Today, we are talking about ICE, and you may have seen in the news how the Trump administration is aggressively pursuing deportation of illegal immigration. The question we want to ask or answer today is this: should the administration be deporting non-violent illegal immigrants out of this country? Video to start with that talks about the reaction, specifically in LA County, to a lot of the immigration raids that echoes the sentiment of probably many people in this country.
Tonight, Los Angeles County declaring a state of emergency over President Trump's immigration raids. In a move typically used after natural disasters, the Board of Supervisors now voting to allow taxpayer funds to help undocumented immigrants and their families pay for rent and legal aid if they're impacted by federal enforcement operations.
I want our immigrant communities to know that we are in this emergency with them. We see them. We understand what they're going through.
It comes as dramatic surveillance video emerges of an ICE arrest in Chicago. Homeland Security officials say an undocumented immigrant inside that SUV tried to flee an arrest Tuesday, ramming into a Border Patrol vehicle. DHS says the Border Patrol vehicle smashed into the SUV to stop it, prompting a chase on foot. Later, a hostile crowd gathering, at one point throwing eggs and rocks at federal officers. Tear gas then deployed. This video shows a man and woman running with a baby in a car seat away from the smoke.
We'll stop there, but obviously there's a lot of emotion around this issue. The nation seems to be really divided on what to do about illegal immigration in our country, especially as it relates to um, nonviolent people. So we'll start off with this question: what is the history of ICE? What is the fundamental concepts that govern ICE in our country?
Yeah, I'll take that on. So ICE was actually formed after the 2001 attacks, September 11, and so it was under George W. Bush, and became part of the DHS. And it was really cool over there. At that point, a lot of transformations happened in our agencies. So there were a lot of separate ones. Like there was a U.S. Customs Services, there was a Immigration and Naturalization Service, the INS. So they all came together. So and the main mission of ICE is, the way they state it, is protect America through criminal investigations and enforcing immigration laws to preserve national security and public safety. I was a little surprised about this as well. They have like over 20, and two of their main arms that govern ICE. One is called the Homeland Security Investigation. They are the ones who do investigations of human trafficking, drug smuggling, cyber crime, transnational crimes. And then there is a second arm, which is called the Enforcement and Removal Operations. So the ERO, they are the ones who actually identify, detain, and deport undocumented immigrants, etc. The investigators arm, it's itself like 10,000 employees. And the ERO is like more than 6,000 employees. So it's just interesting to see how many people are there. And over the years, these guys have conducted thousands of arrests related to drug trafficking, child exploitation, counterfeit goods. And they work very closely with the FBI, all the federal agencies and the state agencies to do their work. So it's a very sophisticated organization, and they have a huge arm of attorneys as well who help them navigate through, because they need to state their cases in front of the judiciary before they can do any removal. So there's a lot of policies that govern what they do, and they do a lot of heroic work and to keep our country safe.
Yeah, and these deportations under ICE did not start under Trump, right? This has been continuing on from previous administrations, but now suddenly the power of ICE has expanded. Trump is certainly ramping up his enforcement of immigration law into U.S. cities. So the question I want to pose: should the administration be doing this? Is this racist? Is this a stretch of the administration's power?
I think it's important to talk about the good stuff of ICE under the Trump administrations. They have saved hundreds of children and women from prostitution rings. They have drastically reduced the influx of illegal immigrants into our country. But also, if you expand that out a little bit further, right? Part of the Democratic platform is they don't like voter registration. They want people to have the ability to come in and vote regardless of where they're at, with no identification, just come in and vote. So if you have an influx of people coming into the country that are undocumented, then what's stopping them from going to a voter registration area and voting? And I think that's like one basic right of being an American citizen. Another one is like the American dream. They're taking away jobs from working American citizens. For example, a lot of undocumented illegal immigrants go into the trucking industry, and that's easily $100,000 job. This is not like $10,000, $20,000 to the table. You're getting people doing your work for a lot cheaper. This is desirable jobs where without a college education, some certification, some exams, you can actually get $100,000 job. And I know there's a big population of illegal immigrants that are involved in that. Not to mention other cash businesses where they don't have to pay taxes. And that is my third point. A lot of undocumented immigrants, even if they're not criminals, which a large portion of them are, where, there's data to back that up, but there are a large portion that are just good citizens that are working. Are they paying taxes? How do you even track that down? They're taking advantage of the infrastructure that we have in the United States, right? Roads, the medical services, the hospitals. So you have to ask yourself, is that fair? Is that fair that American citizens are bearing the brunt of the cost of these infrastructures, losing jobs that are high paying, but also now supporting people to have their rent paid, right? Like I think that like we've lost our minds on some of these issues. It makes no sense where like LA County, like if you visited some of those areas, a lot of US citizens that are living there are in the poverty line. Like, why aren't you paying their rent? Why aren't you subsidizing their homes? I don't understand the population that lives there that puts up with this stuff where, you could barely buy groceries and someone's getting $15,000, $20,000 worth of rent per year or whatever it is. I have no idea how much it costs. So I think you got to ask yourself, it's not about an immediate human to human interaction, right? Like this is not talking about there's a sanctuary. Actually, that's a good point that I want to raise up. Like there are legal ways to get into this country if you are actually in a crisis situation. You could get a sanctuary temporary status where you could prove your case that, hey, I can't go back to my country because they're crazy, they're going to kill me. There's legal ways to get into this country. And just a personal story, my aunt, she came over in the 70s with nothing. She worked 2 or 3 jobs and she brought all of her siblings over. We all lived in one house for at least 5 years, I think, until everyone kind of got off their feet. She paid for everyone's clothes. She paid for everyone's food. She put a bunch of us through school. And she wasn't thinking about her immediate needs. She was thinking about generational change, right? So you can do it. A lot of people have done it. I owe a lot to the United States, and I'm part of the immigration success stories, right? So there is a way to do it. And I just don't think allowing illegal immigrants to come into the country undocumented, not pay any taxes, but take advantage of the benefits of it is fair.
Yeah, and fun fact about our hosts, all of us come from immigrant families. All of us have very unique stories. Biju, you can mention this as well, but as an immigrant to America, your family went through the refugee crisis in the Middle East. My parents came here in the 70s. We lived in the hood in North Philadelphia, heard gunshots at night. My parents took very menial jobs. But so when we take these positions, right, we're not speaking from a point of not understanding immigrant culture, right? All of us are immigrants. Secondly, we're Christian too, right? And when you take a position that's pro-ICE, the automatic reaction to say you're racist, you're fascist, you're white adjacent, whatever it is now, right? But as a believer, listen, it's not mutually exclusive to say that someone is a child of God and has a great purpose in their life and that they've committed a crime that deserves some type of consequence. I'm a believer, I'm a Christian. If I go steal a car, I deserve to go to jail. That's the nature of breaking a law. That doesn't mean I don't love people. That doesn't mean I don't love that person in jail. but when a law is broken, there's a consequence. And so, my position, the inherent definition of illegal says that there should be repercussions. And since the definition of an illegal immigrant involves the violation of immigration law, it's consistent with the rule of law that there should be some type of consequence. Some people have their lists of why illegal immigration should be allowed, and they have all these benefits. However, think about this. If breaking the law is excused on the basis of a beneficial outcome, we're undermining the very principle of the rule of law. By that logic, any crime can be justified if it claims to have or serve a greater societal good. If someone steals a car and perhaps they decide to give the proceeds to charity, should we allow that? Is that the concept? Is that the rule of law that we're allowing? If someone steals your kid's toys and then donates them perhaps to a cancer charity, right? Should that be allowed? Essentially, what we're saying with this topic is this: if we're allowing illegal immigration in our country, we're creating this very dangerous line of reasoning, because once we start excusing certain violations, we erode the very foundation that law is built on. To add on top of that, consider this: President Trump, at the beginning of his presidency, he had a self-deportation initiative offering individuals financial assistance. I believe it was a paid ticket home for people that wanted to take advantage of the opportunity to peacefully leave the country. So this has been thought out by the administration on how to address deportation of criminals.
Yeah, to double down on what you're saying, right? If we do not like the law, then change the law. But letting it slide doesn't make a lot of sense legally. Just some interesting facts to also tag on to what Tijo was saying. Like in the latest fiscal year, there were over 80,000 non-citizens arrested by ICE. And these 80,000 plus people have a combined 500,000 charges against them for violence. And thousands of them are like assault, sexual assault, homicide. They've also removed, just over the past fiscal year, over 3,500 known or suspected gang members and over 200 terrorists, suspected terrorists or known terrorists. They are accomplishing a very important task in America, right? Now, we can argue about the priority, which we know President Trump has instituted a zero tolerance policy. It doesn't matter whether you are a violent illegal immigrant or a productive, non-violent illegal immigrant. It is illegal. If it's illegal, it means it's against the law. Whether I know that sometimes people try to make it like undocumented, it's all the same thing. You don't have a document, you might ask, it's illegal. That's it, right? I mean, you can use adjacent terms, but it doesn't change the fact. So I just wanted to say that. And then, like, if we do not enforce laws, then it starts becoming a lawless country, and that's very dangerous. It's a fine line why you have a structured country like the US and a lot of unstructured, violent countries around the world. The difference is the rule of law and the enforcement of the law. The law without enforcement is useless. It's just like in a very simple sense at home. If you tell your child to do something and don't follow up on it, they're likely not going to do it because there's no enforcement. And then enforcement is normally effective when there's a consequence. And back to your point about being a Christian, there's a biblical principle. Justice is a biblical principle rooted all the way in the Torah, right? That if you did something wrong, there are consequences to be paid for it. And we know the ultimate, Jesus took on the ultimate punishment, but this concept of justice and having consequences is deeply rooted in the Judeo-Christian faith.
I think the question has to be asked, as a Christian, should you have empathy for the criminal to the point where you excuse the crime? Lady Justice, so like the image of the woman holding the scales, she's blindfolded. And there's a reason for that. In front of justice, there is no black, there is no white, there's no Indian, there's no rich, there's no poor, there's no color or social differentiation. All that matters before Lady Justice is right and wrong. What is the law as it's written, and when did you break it? And was the law applicable to you? Then you have to have a subsequent punishment for it. And I think Biju, you and Dennis made a really good point here. We absolutely have to enforce the law. I come from India where, like, you get a speeding ticket, you can literally wave 1,000 rupee at the cop that pulled you over and he'll let you go. Like, no conversation, whatever. Just hold money out the window. And it's just like, if you have money, you can pretty much do whatever you want to do. Comparing that to the United States, it's like night and day, right? Like, as much as people want to cry that, oh, there's so much injustice in the United States and there's no laws that are being followed. Trust me, like, if you go to countries where there are actual lawlessness, where the law is not followed, it's crazy. And I would hate to see that happen to the United States. So I double down and say, like, you have to enforce the law and allow people an opportunity to come back, right? Just it's like regular immigration.
Yeah. And also, I'll add on to that point. There's an assumption that's permeated society, especially from the left. And they say that no Americans want the jobs of illegal immigrants. That's not true. There's a sense of false victimhood here that's actually hurting the real victim, which is the American worker. Let me give you an example. Glen Valley Foods in Nebraska, there was an ICE raid, 70 illegal workers were removed by ICE. Now, you would think the factory's going to shut down, they're going to close their meatpacking operations. Guess what happened? 2 days later, the company's entire waiting room was filled with people filling out job applications. Dozens of new employees were there waiting for jobs. The key is offering wages that align with labor demand to engage the workforce effectively. Now, people make the case that, well, companies benefit from illegal immigrants. Well, I'll make the case, and many people make this case, that illegal immigrants actually cause wage deflation rather than higher wages. I'll cite a study, Stephen Kamroda, he's a director of research for the Center of Immigration Studies. September 2023, he found that between 2017 and 2019, this is when Trump was in office, there was a reduction in illegal immigration, which coincided with a 3.2% increase in median weekly wages for U.S.-born workers, in contrast to slight declines in the prior 4 years when illegal immigration was higher. So there is evidence to show that this wage deflation caused by illegal immigration is adversely affecting the American worker. And so the point being this, the key is offering wages that align with labor demand to engage the available workforce effectively. To tag on to Tijo's point about economic strain, let me cite two examples. One particular example was by an investigative reporter. Her name is Emily Kopp, and she compared the Oregon State Police Healthcare Fund with illegal immigrants. Between 2025 and 2027, she looked at the budget, and the Oregon State budget, you can go look this up, Oregon Health Authority, the Oregon officials expect to send $1.5 billion in combined state and federal taxpayer dollars on a program that offers health benefits to illegal aliens versus 717 million to the Oregon State Police. That's literally double the amount of money you're spending on illegal aliens. Again, we're Christians, we're believers. Do we love people? Yes. Do we believe they're made in the image of God? Absolutely. But there comes a point where you have to ask yourself, is this right? Is this just? Right? And so there's a nuance there in how we approach theology and public policy. Second example I want to cite is this. New York City hospitals, you can look this up, 2023, nearly 30,000 migrants paid visits to emergency rooms or hospitals. The cost for that is being funded by Medicaid. Well, who's paying for Medicaid? It's you and I. Again, do we love people? Absolutely. But I also love that drug addict in Kensington, Philadelphia, who's laying on the street. I also love my inner city communities where the health clinics and facilities are eroded. I also love my fellow countrymen in rural America that don't have good access to healthcare. And so my case in point, as a Christian, as a believer, I love people, but I want to make sure that the people in my own country are taken care of adequately. And so there is an economic strain that is adversely affecting domestic American citizens here.
Yep. The economics, it's an interesting argument that both sides make, right? Generally, they say from a macroeconomic perspective, there isn't a drain, but localized, there is. Segments of people are affected, segments of communities are affected. I don't think anyone argues that. Just to reiterate, again, coming back to a Christian perspective, I want to make sure that people understand there is a Judeo-Christian background to this. So let me quote a few verses in the Bible. Deuteronomy chapter 1 verse 17 says, "You shall not be partial in judgment. You shall hear the small and the great alike." Leviticus chapter 19 verse 15. "You shall not render an unfair decision. You do not favor the poor or show deference to the rich. Judge your kinsmen fairly." And Exodus chapter 23 verse 3 says, "Do not show favoritism to the poor man in his lawsuit." So the Judeo-Christian principles say to not show favoritism, whether it's poor or rich, to not show favoritism, judge fairly, be fair in your judgment. If there is a law, make sure you abide by it. The only other point I will say is like, should make sure always that they are adhering to the principles and the law of the land. So they should be operating within the law. Nothing should be done outside of it. Whether they're doing raids or whatever, should not be any racist elements to that. It should be done judiciously and fairly. That is the only other foundational aspect that I'll put forward.
Yeah, excellent point.
I'll
Tijo?
add a couple more stats at you guys. Just pull them up quickly. And you know, you could look all this up. This is from the American Immigration Council. In 2023, undocumented immigrants contributed about $89.8 billion in taxes to the U.S. economy, right? Which is a huge number. This is by FAIR. You could look this up. An estimated 182 billion, so 100 billion more came in from tax expenditures for illegal immigrants. So this is how much the government spent to support illegal immigrants. There's also an additional 5.8 billion in food stamps that was given for illegal immigrants. Tax credits claimed by illegal immigrants in 2022 was 13.4 billion. So this notion that illegal immigrants are contributing to our economy, it doesn't really hold up. They're withdrawing more than they're contributing. And even more than that, I think it's important to highlight the point that you brought up, Dennis, where illegal immigrants, like if you follow that train of thoughts, they're coming to the country, they're not they could work under the table, they could collect cash payments, they don't have to pay taxes on it. You don't have to pay them higher wages because you don't have to justify your costs. So from a business perspective, if you get 3 contractors that you know, you're going to do lawn work, right? One, it's going to cost you $2,000. The other, it's like $1,500 because maybe the owner is now working, right? Look, that's a small business. He's going to eat some of that and he's going to pass the savings on, so it's $1,500. And then an illegal immigrant that comes in, it's like, hey, I'll do it for $500. Like from a business perspective, who are you going to pick? You're going to pick the cheapest one. And that is a compounding effect because now profits are way up, right? Like you see CEOs and business owners taking on home ridiculous amounts of pay, right? Because it's like, hey, per capita, right? Of the documented per capita worker, we're generating X amount of money. I'm a genius CEO. Pay me more money, right? And then you take that even a step further. That savings for people that are citizens working means that the minimum wage never goes up. Even if the minimum wage goes up, right? Like if you look at the disparity of pay in white collar jobs, where in the United States, you can pay someone $40,000 because you know they're on a visiting visa or whatever, or you could pay an American citizen $140,000, right? Because you add on options and benefits and perks for the job, all those things. When you wrap it up, the cost benefit just does not make sense. So I mean, we had this conversation a couple of weeks ago, but I understand where Trump's coming from. If you want to solve the problem of the middle class shrinking, you got to give the middle class a chance to survive. And with illegal immigrants in the country at this capacity that we're taking them in, you're shrinking your middle class. And if you shrink the middle class, you're just making the gap between the rich and poor be drastically improvement. I think there's people that are wrong on both sides, right? Like I think the rich in the country need to do a lot more where they're giving back to society, right? Where they're contributing to causes.
Yeah, and the point I also want to make is this. This isn't as much about empathy as much as it's about an election and electoral votes. Let's be honest, immigration isn't just a humanitarian issue, it's a very political one. Tijo, you alluded to this, but many people in the Democratic Party push for pathways to citizenship for illegal immigrants because these new voters often lean blue and that helps them in their election. But the second thing I want to address is this, right, regarding nonviolent illegal immigration. Now, many people say because they're nonviolent, they should stay. 2 things to think about. Just because someone doesn't have a violent record in the United States doesn't necessarily mean that there are no criminal records elsewhere. The immigration process exists for a reason. Oftentimes, it includes a sponsor verification, whether it's a family member or an employer. There's interviews. There's actually a biometric screening. There's an interview at a U.S. consulate. All those processes are designed to meet basic security and legal standards for people that are being admitted into the country. Now, if you enter into the country, there's a large percentage of people, especially through the southern border, that are paying a cartel to be transmitted into the country. And so the question we have to ask is, what are they coming into this country with? Are they criminals elsewhere? Do they have records in other countries that we don't know about? Second point I want to make is this regarding nonviolent illegal immigration. That doesn't necessarily equate to assimilating to American values. Some individuals, though not violent, remain opposed to democracy. They remain opposed to the foundational ideals of the United States. And so we need to be careful. We need to screen the type of people that are entering our borders. And so obviously, this topic is ongoing and will continue through the news, but wanted to open up this last round for final thoughts. What do you guys think should be our role as believers? I know we alluded to a few verses from scripture and this already in the podcast, but as believers, how do we approach the immigration issue?
Now that's more broad. I do think that we need to have a dedicated session on immigration in general. But the problem with the illegal immigration question is that if it's very porous, there's a lot of people flowing in, and this is not just Mexicans, right? These are people from all over the world. There are Indians, Pakistanis, Iranians. There are a lot of people coming in through the Mexican border, and it's an arduous journey for them to actually get there. There's a lot of people who are killed on the way, who are abused on the way, assaulted. They spend a lot of money, right? So this, and it has to stop because we have to stay within the framework of rules and the laws of the land, right? My own family is still in line to come here, and it's been a decade, more than a decade now. So we have to respect the law because even as a Christian, the Bible says that the rulers and the authorities and the laws are made to govern us, and we are supposed to abide within them as long as they are not against the word of God, right? Other than that, the rulers and the authorities are appointed by God, and we are supposed to abide by them. So the law says that it's wrong, and I would then support the way that the law is implemented through ICE as long as they stay within the boundaries of the law and execute it correctly, and they're not doing any profiling. As long as they stay within the boundaries, it's only fair to do it. And President Trump came in with a specific mandate to execute these things. And I would say that there is always, I don't know what a good cyclical timeline is, but every 5-10 years, some kind of cleaning up and rinsing the whole system and being aggressive in some of these policies is actually good for the system, because there was a big issue that happened in the last 4 years with a lot of people coming in. So this is why President Trump had to be strict about the implementation of this policy.
Yeah, great points.
I'll piggyback on something you said, Dennis, that I know you're going to get killed for. The fact that, like, do you want to have people coming into this country that don't share democratic values? That, like, they want to illegally come into this country but don't share democratic values. Why is that a problem? That's a problem because the United States is found on democracy, right? It's found on the principles of democracy. Let me be clear about what I say. If you don't agree to that and you're coming into the country just to take advantage of the country, that makes no sense to me. Like, go to other countries. If you like communism, there's China, there's Cuba, there's Russia, there's other countries you go to. If you like Islamic law, there's other countries. Go to Saudi Arabia, right? Like, go prosper in those places. The reality is you can't prosper in those countries. That's why they're coming here. That's why they're trying to get into here. But in whatever thought process they have, they're getting some things mixed. Like, yeah, you can come to the United States and make money, but now I want to change it to be something that I escaped from. Like, why? Just stay where you're at. It makes much more sense. I think it's important to show compassion to the world. I think it's important to secure our borders. I think it's important to enforce the law and regulations of the country that you're in, because otherwise you're going to get a lawless society, right, where people can do whatever they want to do. And actually, like, that video that you watched, what I was thinking is, like, man, what third world country are we in where you can attack the police like that, where you can throw fireballs at them and spray them with all kinds of stuff. And literally, that's what LA is looking like. It is literally years of this illegal immigration where they incorporate their own laws, their own regulations, their own system of government. And now, because ICE is coming in to enforce it, they are emboldened to go and do whatever the heck they want to do. That is literally, that will be across the United States. What those images you saw of people literally running for their lives because of the people around them will be exactly what we see all across America if we don't get this under control.
Yeah, excellent points. I liken this to like my kid's laundry basket. I don't know if you ever tried to go through your kid's laundry basket. There's like a pair of socks here, a shirt here, like a winter coat here. Sometimes your own clothes end up in it. And I think that's what happens with immigration. We bundle together like theology and public policy, interpersonal communication, and the fruits of the spirit and concepts of justice and grace all into this big thing, trying to figure it out. When in fact, the reality is we need to separate theology over here, put public policy over here, put concept of justice over here and concept of grace over here, and look at it all from a balanced lens and ask ourselves, what is the best approach to immigration that we can enforce? Justice with compassion within the line of law, rather than extorting one verse out of scripture and making a whole statement about immigration and public policy. And so we'll continue this discussion in future podcasts. Thank you guys so much for joining. I think this is an awesome episode because all of us come from immigrant families. We have very different experiences. We've gone through different parts of American society, different parts of the world. So I think hearing about immigration from our perspective is pretty fascinating. For those of you listening out there, I encourage you guys to like and subscribe. Thank you for checking out The Balanced Lens and hope to see you guys next week. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.